Hey, it's Jessica with Food Foundation, and today I'm going to share the talk I gave about preparing your immune system for Delta or any variants that a virus might have and beyond. So viruses are not going anywhere, they are part of our environment, and what we need to do is build resiliency to our environment. Why me? Why am I giving this talk? I'm not a doctor. What I'm not going to do is sit here and tell you if you should get a vaccine, if you should give your kids a vaccine. That would be outside of my scope of practice. But I am a researcher. I am a nerd on the immune system. I love this topic. I've been studying it since 2011, and I've spent over 30 hours with courses with experts of virology and immunology, PhDs that are looking at this topic from a really broad perspective and specifically in functional medicine. So functional medicine is so good for healing and improving your immune system because it takes an integrative approach. We're not looking at the very specific gastroenterology or endocrinology, but we're looking at the whole system, which is what it's going to take to build resiliency. We're using the wisdom of our ancestors and modern science to resolve these diseases. And I'm going to share how you can protect yourself from viruses and from other environmental threats to your immune system. I'm going to help you find your immune vulnerabilities and find real solutions to address them. My superpower is taking these really complicated scientific ideas and then reducing them down so that they're super easy to understand. And then you can have an educated, intelligent conversation with your friends or your doctors or your peers. So these are the topics that we're going to cover. First, we're going to meet your immune system. There's so many players. When I first learned about it, you know how sometimes you learn about something and it's so complicated, you're like, forget it, this is never going to happen. I'm never going to understand this. And then all of a sudden, it's like a romance novel. You find out you hate the thing, and then all of a sudden, little by little, you're drawn apart, and then you realize that you love everything about that topic and you bring it back into your life. That's how the immune system is for me, and I hope I can engage you and make you interested in it too. We're going to talk about how you get sick with a virus. I think if you understand how you get sick, then maybe you'd understand what the sick symptoms are, what's going on, and how you can feel a little bit more confident and more empowered about it instead of afraid. We're going to talk about how you can avoid getting sick with variants and mutations, and the virus keeps changing and changing. What are you going to do? It's okay. We're going to be okay. How to have a good immune response. What we want is a good immune response, whether we catch COVID, because chances are everyone's going to come across it, or whether you get the vaccine and you want a good response. You want your immune system to work for you, doing its job. And look at what it is that's making us immune compromised. That is when we have a really bad experience and we've seen worse outcomes. We're going to look at preparing your natural immunity for anything. Really important that you build resilience and tolerance to your environment so that you don't have to live in a bubble. And what are immune modulators? That's what we're going to want to use. And I'm going to show you in functional medicine how we use holistic medicine or alternative things that are natural and work synergistically with your body instead of invasive medications and procedures that can actually do harm if they're not beneficial. And finally, just throwing in a little tip on how to have your best vaccine response. I know most of us are vaccinated, but some of us are still on the fence, and some have children that they're wondering when to do it. And I cannot tell you when to do it. That's something you need to discuss with your practitioner. But I am going to share how to have a good immune response in case you're still up for that vaccine. So let's meet your immune system. This is a really complicated graphic. Thanks for Apex Energetics for giving it to me to use. And I don't want you to sit here and try to study it and learn it unless that's your thing, but just look how complicated. There are so many things. And this is why it takes years to understand. And I'm so proud of you for being here and wanting to understand, spending a little bit of time. Just look that on the body, the human body, all these little red hot spots are different places that we might feel an immune system response, because the immune system governs three main things if you want to just sort of simplify it. An immune response, like to an infection, right? You get a fever when it tries to burn up that infection. Inflammation, and here you can see all the different areas where you might feel inflammation in the head as a headache, in the shoulder as pain, in the lungs or the heart as sort of indigestion or heartburn, in the gut, in the groin where you have lymph glands, in the hands, achy joints, in the knees, all of these different places. We can't say with one particular disease or one virus, oh, this one causes gut pain and shoulder pain. If you really look at it, even COVID-19, there's so many different areas of inflammation or areas of pain or symptoms because the body inflames, and there's only kind of so many places where it can do that, but it's going to be different for every person. And then the third one is allergies. And so when we are eating something, the body's entire immune response is this self, and we'll talk about this more in detail, or is this a foreign object, and do I need to attack it and get it out of the body? And if you look at this graphic, you see that there's arrows and everything's connected. It's like a web. The immune system is this beautifully designed spider web, and the second you pull it from one area, the second you take one medication or one herb or something that's very effective, you cannot expect that it's not going to affect all of the areas of the body. It's completely integrative, and why we need to use an integrative approach to help the body resolve itself. That is how it builds resilience. It can absolutely do it if we get out of the way and let the immune system be an immune system. So what does a healthy immune system look like? A healthy immune system is like a wild cat. Not like a dog, not like a very happy coming up and I love you and I'm so happy you're here and pet me. Not at all. A cat is mostly sleeping, right? They're not lazy. They're just reserving their energy for the kill or for the necessary action. They do not expel energy lightly, but they can attack as needed. Grrr. I use this little acronym because you'll see it's growling defensively because that is its job. Your immune system's job is to detect invaders and act defensively. That is your innate immune system. It is to everybody. Everyone has one. It's natural. Your immune system is deciding, is that self that just came into the mouth? And what I mean is not that you're eating your own fingernails or you're biting your hair, but something that can be turned into yourself. For example, if you eat an animal protein is very much like human protein. You can turn that immediately into yourself. If you have dairy, cow's milk is almost like breast milk. Granted, there are differences, but it can be turned into self proteins. Food coloring cannot. Your body's going to probably attack it. A processed oil snack with all sorts of additives and preservatives, no, the immune system is going to attack it. A virus, a fungus, a bacteria, most likely your body is going to decide that cannot be turned into self. That is an invader. And then R, the immune system is regulated internally. It is a very tightly controlled process that mounts a response that it feels is appropriate to the level of the threat. This is really important. Remember that when you have a fever, that is a very important job that your immune system is doing. It is telling you, go lay down, do not go to work, do not go play soccer or run errands. Please go to bed so that I can raise the temperature so that it is not hospitable for this bacteria, this bug, this virus, and will kill it and stop it from replicating. If it thinks that it needs to raise a high fever, it will. If you start taking aspirin and trying to diminish it, well, it will go down at first because the aspirin will prevent you from making that fever. But as soon as it stops, it's going to mount a higher fever. It does not mean that you have a worse virus or a worse illness. It's actually a healthy immune response for your body to mount that fever. So remember that it's on purpose. Diarrhea is on purpose. Your body is trying to get something out. Please don't stop it by taking Imodium. You want to let the body sweep that out and just stay hydrated and help it flush everything out. Sweat, really, really hot fevers will cause a lot of sweat, and it will smell often as the toxins your body are trying to release out of the body. When you're sneezing, you don't want to hold back that sneeze. That is that tightly regulated response to get the bug out, because maybe you don't have quite enough mucus, or hopefully you do, and it wants to use those mucus particles to make the nose slippery so that the virus cannot get into your nose. So we want to sneeze if we need to, hopefully into a tissue or your bat wing or your mask these days, and then wash them. We have a cough. Everything that the body does is on purpose, unless it's overreactive, and that is often when the body is confusing self with non-self. And that's where we see things like autoimmune disease, or often when foods come in that are confusing because they've been so modified, and we start to develop hives or rashes, and that is an overly reactive immune system. Very often with COVID-19, the biggest trauma and that we see is an overreactive system, and that they've actually found cases where when they can get the patients to calm the system down, taking deep breaths and calming down, that they can actually get more oxygen into the lungs and lower the heart rate and have less tragic outcomes. The next R is that it resolves and repairs. A healthy immune system is going to get better. We have even seen that in most of the cases with COVID-19, in most of the cases with flu or other viruses. Your body knows what to do, and it's always trying to heal and find homeostasis. Unfortunately, we're not always supporting that process. Like I just said, if it causes diarrhea, if it causes fever, if it causes what it thinks it needs to do, we are constantly trying to take medication to stop that from happening. Or it wants us to sleep and rest because it needs a lot of energy for the immune system to mount this response. And we are out going to work and going shopping and still running errands and picking kids up from school and things that are really taking a lot of energy out from the immune system's job. So we need to give it support and try not to use all of the over-the-counter drugs from drug interventions. Now, I'm not saying that you should stop taking prescriptions from the doctor, but very often when you go in for something like a virus, there are very little interventions that work. That's why we're still looking for different medications. You might be thinking or have heard, what about ivermectin? Well, what happens with ivermectin is it's not a very specific antiviral, but it can kill parasites. And when we look at a lot of people and their health, I'm talking about sort of comorbidities now, a lot of people have parasites, which is why if you give them ivermectin, maybe it kills off the parasites, and then you have a little bit more immune army to fight off the virus instead of the parasites. But otherwise, it's sort of chancy and risky, and you don't quite know if knocking your immune system down in that moment is going to help. Finally, resilient. So resilient to the environment happens when you allow your immune system to do its job and to resolve. It does resolve from inflammation. It resolves from the allergic response when we stop putting in all of the things that are causing it, that allergic response. And it builds resiliency. So you might be thinking, well, no, I'm allergic to like pollens that are in the air, so I can't ever get over that. That's absolutely not true. And I've gone through them myself, where I had allergies really bad in college when I was fighting all of the natural processes of my body. And one of the main things that your body does is when it's growling defensively is produces stomach acid. And it produces that stomach acid to kill off pathogens that enter because they're proteins, and stomach acid breaks down proteins. But I had a little bit of acid reflux because I was super stressed out in college. So I took antacids. And the more antacids I took, the worse my allergies got, because I was not breaking down all of the proteins and the things entering the body, and they were starting to kick up more allergies. And then all of a sudden I was allergic to the pollen outside. Move it forward about 10, 15 years. It took me forever to learn what was going on. When I started to resolve the stomach acid issue, resolve the stress around in my life, resolve the breaking down of the proteins, and the allergies started to go away, I was no longer allergic to the pollen outside. And I now see this with clients all the time. Your body will resolve as you let it go through the immune processes naturally. You let it get sick, those feelings that you feel when your immune system responds, and then you're like a lion tamer. Instead of just taking an antacid or taking an aspirin or taking something that kind of puts the muzzle on the cat when it's like, "Rrr." Instead of just trying to stop it, we use a little immune modulator, and I'll share what those are with you, that are like, "Here, kitty, kitty, it's okay. It's okay. Your tail's all poofed out. Your teeth are showing, but it's okay." And you help calm the system down. And that's what's so amazing about these immune modulators. So here's how we get sick. This is a great diagram that Jennifer Liu used in the LA Times. And it was also verified by a virology professor at University of Texas and a professor at microbiology and immunology and pediatrics at University of Iowa. So it wasn't just written by an author. I was actually looked at by a bunch of experts. But it's a really great diagram to show. You see the little coronavirus there. To me, it looks like a dandelion. And I'm going to put out another video for you to watch, just a 1 minute, so you can see when you see the dandelion, all the little spike proteins are like all the little fronds of the dandelion, and they're sticking out. And those bind to the receptor, that little black Y on our cell, and they bind, and then that opens up and lets all the contents run into our cell. It releases all of the RNA. You see in the big picture, that's a cell, like when you learned in biology. The little blue egg is our nucleus. Do not worry, it does not go into the nucleus where the DNA is. It is going over to those little black, they look like little ironing boards stuck to the maize, and those are ribosomes. And it's basically just going to read it like plans and make little proteins. If you have a vaccine, you're just getting that little red, looks like a little flower on the dandelion, just the spike protein. And then your ribosome will make lots of little spike proteins. So you see, you cannot get coronavirus from the vaccine of just making all of the little spike proteins. That's one of the proteins of the whole coronavirus. That is, it has the spike protein, it has the envelope protein, it has the membrane protein, and it has the nuclear capsid protein, and we have to fight off all of those proteins. So when it drops its RNA into the cell and it hits those little ribosomes, it makes lots of whole coronaviruses with all of those proteins, and why you're going to get probably more sick. You have to respond right to all of those proteins. Now, when that virus bound to the receptor and went into the cell, that's about days 0 to 96 hours, 4 days. Then your immune system responds, and that's when you feel sick. You do not feel sick from the virus. The virus does not make you feel ill. Your response to it is what makes you feel sick. So by day 4, your body sees all of these viruses being replicated and manufactured, and you send out inflammatory messages to your immune system. Hey, fever. Hey, muscle soreness, headache, sore throat. Do whatever you have to do to wall off, flare up, get these invaders out of here, cough it out, diarrhea it out, sneeze it out, put this person down in bed. I need all of the energy. I cannot have this person utilizing any energy. No food, no digestion, please. So you're like, you feel sick, you feel nauseous, you don't want to eat, you feel fatigue, you feel as much bad sickness as the body needs to allow you this space. The healthier somebody is, the easier they will have through this. And that might be a different healthy than you think, but it's modified by how much stress is in your life, how much nutrition is in your body for your immune system, how much sleep so that it can recover, and your tolerance to exercise, because it takes a lot out of you. So here's a little close-up picture where you can see kind of what was happening. That big purple cell, like this is something that we do not know what it is. That's sort of scary, right? But over here on our immune system, we have the APC. That is an antigen presenting cell. So see how it's holding on that little red ball? Let's say it got this from the coronavirus and it's like, hey guys, look what I have, right? This is showing all of the little T cells. You might have heard of that. The T cells, like you say, they say, get your vaccine so that you have a good T cell. And it doesn't matter if you get the Pfizer, the Moderna, or the Johnson & Johnson, you're always going to have the same T cell response. Essentially, you're going to have as healthy of a T cell response as your immune system is healthy, because the antigen presenting cell and the T cells, these are innate. Everybody has this. It comes out and says, hey, this is the bad guy. Go find it. And then it's very specific, right? It can tell if that was a egg yolk, an egg white, a hard-boiled egg, a scrambled egg. It's very specific when it tells this. And that T cell goes over to either the big yellow T regulatory cells, because it goes, sorry, that was just egg yolk, no big deal. T regulatory, T normal, do nothing. Or it goes, I've never seen that before. What is that? That's going to be a coronavirus. And it sends over to the cytotoxic T cell, put poison on everything that looks like this. Just kill it. Or it goes down to the B cell, and the B cell makes all these little antibodies. You can see the antibodies are like flags. So you're going out and saying, that's what it is, flag it. And then all the cytotoxic T cells come over and kill everything that's on the flag. So we want that antibody response to happen. That happens after about 4 to 5 days. So that's, again, that cytotoxic cell, when it comes out and pours poison, that does not feel very good in our body. That's that sick feeling of nausea. And essentially, once it kills it, it's going to have to filter it through the liver, send it out through the stool, maybe dirty sweat, things that we want to happen to get that out of the body. It's a bunch of waste when it kills these guys off. That cytotoxic T cell, that making antibodies, that is an acquired or adaptive immune response. It's like a learning machine. You see these in movies sometimes where they get smarter and smarter. Our body gets smarter and smarter and flagging, so that the reason why you do that vaccine and you flag the spike protein, right? It wouldn't be able to flag that whole big purple cell, but just the spike protein on the end, is because the next time that comes into your body, because somebody sneezes on you or touches you that had coronavirus, your body goes, yep, I know what that is, flag, kill, done. And it happens in like 4 days, right? And you don't even feel it until that 4th day. But this whole process takes a lot of energy. So you need to try to stay calm, sleep. If you're not hungry, don't eat. Just hydrate. It takes a lot of water to flush everything out. Rest. Do nothing. Let your body feel sick, which means let your immune system respond. And even if you just got the vaccine, let your immune system respond. It only has to make antibodies for just that one spike protein, not an entire coronavirus, but it still takes a process, which is going to be different for every person. So all of this happens a week past an infection. That's why you're kind of hearing, 4 days, 5 days till you hear. It's different on every person, but it's really roughly about 0 to 96 hours in the first half, and then about 4 to 5 days later. And then the cells are trained and they have memory, and they reduce that immune response that you feel each time. So again, if you have no response, it might not necessarily be a good thing. It might mean that your body is so hyper-adrenalized or stressed that maybe you didn't feel that little shift in the immune system, or maybe that it didn't mount a response at all. Here's an even deeper look. This is actually that little green or turquoise, that's a spike protein. So proteins are like little beaded necklaces, right? And the beads are all of these different amino acids, and they're like little Legos or like beads. They form together, and that makes a protein, a whole protein. And those can be made out of things like tryptophan from turkey, you've heard of, or lysine, glutamine, things you might have heard of. All of these things are just little patterns, and each pattern makes a different protein. The ACE2, the orange, that's a ACE2 receptor. And what we're seeing is this turquoise spike protein binds to the receptor, right? And what's happening is proteins mutate. The different beads on the necklace, sometimes in our body, they can get mixed up, and that would be called a mutation. It happens over genetics over a long time because our body has so many processes to correct mistakes. But a virus is not like a great intelligent being. It is a lot less intelligent. I hate to say less intelligent though. It's smart for what it is designed to do, which is survive. And sometimes it has to do that by just changing. So it allows changes to happen, whereas our body would not allow that to happen, right? You don't see like you have brown hair your whole life and then all of a sudden it's blonde and then it's red. It's like it keeps making the same protein. But the virus changes. So those pink spots, these are not the colors. I mean, it's basically all just human color inside your body, but it's highlighted here so that you can see it in this really great, this is from the International Journal of Molecular Sciences. The pink spots are mutations. So you can see on the N501Y, that is a mutation. That is a change that has made the binding stickier or better. It can bind a little better. So then you're reading, well, maybe the Delta variant has the T478K mutation, and it has all of these L452R mutations that bind it better. Are we getting sicker? And again, if you understand how we get sick, you know that that's a silly question. You don't get more sick because it's changing and it's sticky and it's stickier. It can just bind a little easier. When it binds easier, then you might get sick sooner, and you're going to get sick the same amount as your body would get sick because it's the same envelope protein and nuclear capsid protein and everything on the inside from those little spikes that are sticking out on the dandelion. Everything on the inside is the same. So you're going to get the same sickness that you would from the other variants. It's just that this variant is changing a couple of the proteins that make it a little easier to bind. And each time it changes, it's a little harder for your immune system that's looking at saying, I got the vaccine. I know what the spike protein looks like. It doesn't look, unless you got actual COVID, wild COVID or natural COVID, the real coronavirus, it might recognize all the proteins. But if you have just the vaccine, then you're going to only be able to look for the spike protein. And so this is a little bit like when you see your friend from high school and you're like, oh, you got a haircut. I still recognize you. And you're like, oh, you put on a few pounds. Okay, I still recognize you. Oh, nose job. I still recognize you. And then you're like, oh, transgender. Is that the same person that I went to high school with? Now there's so many mutations, you no longer recognize that person. That's what's going on with your immune system. Once the virus mutates so many times, completely changes, then our immune system's like, I don't know what that is anymore. It will still go through the process, the same process, and you will probably still get the same sick that your body would otherwise, because it's going through the same process, and it is raising your fever and shooting out diarrhea and taking all the symptoms that it feels are necessary for your body to heal. So what does it take to have a good immune response? Since this is happening, and probably it's going to happen to everyone, they have shown in the literature that we're all going to be exposed sooner or later. First of all, you can protect your barriers. Just that little guy coming in, the coronavirus getting into the body. So first of all, you could just avoid everybody and live in a bubble. That would be super bad for your health. It's far more important to be around your community, to be around people you love, to have communication and touch and time together. This is what really helps you have longevity and good health. So we can wear masks. That's just one way to keep the germs from entering your nose, from entering your mouth, or to be polite around people that might be more immune compromised. It's polite for you to wear a mask. So it's just something that we should do regardless of how we feel about it in a public place, because I'm sure it's nobody's intention to get somebody that is immune compromised that might be in there sick. And you, if you're healthy, might be carrying around the virus. You can do that whether you are vaccinated or not. It can be on your person, and if you're healthy, you might not even know that. We can have healthy stomach acid. So let's say that it does get into our body because we were eating around others, or who knows why. And we can have really healthy stomach acid so that it can break down that pathogen and break down that protein. So hopefully we're not taking a proton pump inhibitor like Prilosec, or hopefully we're not taking histamine blockers or antacids. Really important to have a good stomach pH that is acidic enough to break down pathogens. Hopefully we have healthy mucus so our nose can sneeze and our runny nose can run things out before it gets actually into the lungs and into the places in the body where there are a lot of ACE receptors. Hopefully we have a really healthy gut lining with good bacteria that are robust and can fight off these viruses and other pathogens that are trying to get into the body and use our cells. And hopefully our cells have a lot of energy so that they can go through the process of killing off these pathogens. We can stop the binding. This is really important, and where you've probably heard some of these things out in the media. We can increase these little ACE receptors so that they are free in the serum or in the liquid in the blood. This is really important because if they're floating around, they're like little decoys, and the coronavirus or the spike protein will come and bind, and then it's not bound to any cell. So when it's bound, our big APCs that are macrophages, what are like Pac-Mans, come over and just eat it, which is great. We have a lot of those. Really healthy immune system comes over, eats it, done. It's going to end up as waste, and you won't get the binding. And you can stop replication. There are immune modulating agents like elderberry, like garlic, that can stop replication, and I'll give you some more. I'm just giving you the overview first. And then you can trust your immune system so that it can have a healthy response. Leave it alone, separate yourself so that you're not sharing it with everyone around you. Rest, let yourself be sick, and then preventatively, we can remove all of the immune barriers or the things that compromise our immune system so that it can have a healthy resolve and we can become not only better, but more resilient, more tolerant, and have all of those memory cells, because the best immunity is natural immunity from catching the entire virus. So, in order to first increase all of those ACE receptors in the serum, we need a really healthy diet. This is a turmeric tea. The turmeric is really well known for increasing ACE receptors. It has a whole bunch of other therapeutic advantages. It is an anti-inflammatory, and it helps modulate the immune system. So the turmeric you can get it natural, as the root kind of looks like ginger, bright yellow. Most foods that are bright in a color have a lot of antioxidants and polyphenols, things that are really good to boost the gut bacteria so that they're strong in the gut. I also made it in a very rich cream because it's really high in vitamin A and vitamin D, and we need all of the fat vitamins, but especially A and D, because they increase the receptors. There's been a lot of studies on vitamin D that are showing that low levels greatly increase your risk of a poor outcome, and higher numbers of vitamin D are more protective. So we want to make sure that we are outside. These are the kids playing outside in the sunshine, getting the vitamin D. Also, exercise. So here they're just swinging, they're just playing. Your exercise does not need to be something that's like a HIIT workout or pounding the pavement. It just needs to be movement. Exercise is a challenge. It's a little bit of a stimulation that challenges your system and makes it stronger and more resilient. So exercising outside, getting that vitamin D, you're going to really be boosting all of those serum ACE receptors. Really important. And finally, sleep. So sleep is so important, but specifically in the ACE receptors, because melatonin, which is made by our pineal gland and by our gut, is incredibly important, and it prevents insomnia, constipation, weight gain, increased appetite, poor immunity, and it also increases the ACE receptors. So really important that you're trying to get your 8 hours of sleep every night, and more for children, especially our high school teens that are often so sleep deprived. And I often say they need to go to bed earlier. And it's only because we cannot move their morning back any later. Like, we just don't have that ability. So really trying to nourish that in them. So here's another picture in the top corner of all of those really rich vitamins, fat-soluble vitamins that we need. There's vitamin A, D, E, and K. If I had some natto, the fermented soybean, I would have almost all of them on this picture, but I have the fish eggs, the little caviars. A lot of kids will sometimes eat these in sushi. It's almost like they know what their body needs. Really rich in vitamin A. The salmon or the fattier fish, there's a little bit of cream here, and I'm just trying to get as many of those rich vitamins, the fat-soluble vitamins, as possible. You can inhibit replication. Remember, I was saying we were talking about the ACE inhibitor, but now we're talking about the replication process. Elderberry, and these are fresh elderberry in the bottom picture. It's so amazing when you see these elderberries picked fresh, because they look like lungs with all these little arteries and then capillaries and then all of the little alveoli, and foods that look like body parts are very healthy for those body parts. And elderberry are dark. Remember I said the darker the color, there's higher polyphenols, really high in vitamin C. They can stop viruses like the flu. Also, think of pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are full of zinc, and it's really important to have enough zinc to inhibit replication. You can also get zinc in oysters and a lot of seafood. You need a lot of quercetin, and quercetin can inhibit replication. It comes in onions and apples, and you can stew the apples and cook the onions, or you can take quercetin in supplement form, and it's an immune modulator. So they're not just coming in and stopping, they're helping the body through this process. And finally, all the greens. Super important to get the greens because they're dark in the color. We're getting a really great dark antioxidant and polyphenol. They help with circulation, so they're good for the lungs and the breathing. They're full of vitamin C. And the sulfur in the cruciferous ones, like the cabbages and the bok choys and the broccolis and the cauliflowers and the turnips, these ones are really high in sulfur and can help the body produce glutathione. So if you've seen glutathione in some of the supplements that people recommend, it's because it helps the liver with detoxification, helps get all of that waste out of the body, and it helps as the master antioxidant in the body. And our body can produce it with all of these cruciferous vegetables high in sulfur. Lastly, we can protect our immune function. So remember, we want to allow the immune system to have a good response by sleeping, by giving it all of these good nutrients and antioxidants that it needs, maybe by taking probiotics or fermented foods to help strengthen the gut bacteria so that they can fight it off. And then we want to calm the system down, and we can take an Epsom salt bath. An Epsom salt bath is full of magnesium. The body will absorb the magnesium and calm down, and it's full of sulfur, which will help you make glutathione. So it's an amazing process for the body. You can even regulate someone's temperature when they have a fever by making the bath just a little bit cooler. You don't want a cold bath and make the system work harder. Keep the body comfortable so that it's not really needing to adjust too much. Just maybe have the bath a little bit around a body temperature, or maybe just a little bit lower. And the body will repair with a natural resiliency. It will resolve. It will make the antibodies like flags. It will flag. It will make memory T cells specifically for that antigen so that it recognizes it the next time. We also want to keep a healthy defense in the entire immune system as it's going through this process. And that is where we use immunoglobulins. Immunoglobulins are like antibodies. They're helping the body produce that flagged response. And that comes in colostrum. So babies that are breastfed are naturally getting this first exposure and helping build antibodies from their mothers. But if you were not breastfed and you did catch the coronavirus, or you have a troubled immune system, it's compromised, you might want to look into taking immunoglobulins. They have them in supplement form, and they are amazing at helping support your body to make that antibody response. They are preventative and can be helpful afterwards. Also preventatively, if you're not eating all of these really healthy fats, you can take omega-3s. Omega-3s have the active form of EPA and DHA that resolve inflammation in the body. They are far better than an aspirin in that they have the same response, but it's synergistically with the body instead of aspirin that simply stops the process from happening. And it also, stops your body from making mucus so that your stomach could run out of that nice coating. And that's why they say if you overdose, you could have stomach bleeding. So fish oil synergistically works with the body and has so many other benefits besides just reducing inflammation and providing these fat-soluble nutrients. And all of these things can improve your effectiveness of the vaccine, and it can decrease your severity and your side effects. So they're beneficial whether you're vaccinated, whether you're not going to be vaccinated, whether you get sick, no matter what, these are things that work with the system. So this is taking a look at what we can do about comorbidities. And this is a weekly summary of US COVID-19 hospitalizations. And what we see is, you can find this on the CDC, I can put the link below, the highest in the blue is adults, the turquoise is pediatric, and the red is pregnant, so we're not really going to look at that. The highest is hypertension. Hypertension, again, I was talking about how we need to keep the system calm. Most of the people that have hypertension have very high stress. It's one of the main symptoms. 57.7% of the weekly US COVID-19 hospitalizations had hypertension. So stress is a huge factor in your response to the coronavirus. It's not as esoteric as we think when people say, maybe try yoga, maybe try some meditation. It can save your life because it is that important. And it really is about reducing stress, reducing salt, not in your normal diet if you eat Himalayan pink salt or the best salts. I'm talking about processed foods with garbage salt, especially the low sodium that uses a fake salt, but the super processed foods. And often medications. Medications can raise your blood pressure. Really, in the scientific literature, medications only work really well for about 30% of people. The rest it can work very poorly for. So it's really important to stay connected to your doctor and asking all the time if you're on a medication. It's not simply something to go home and then just take all the time, or to get over the counter and try to biohack your body. They can have very serious side effects. And dehydration can cause serious hypertension. So we really want to drink more water. So what's the second highest underlying medical condition? Obesity. 50.4%, maybe that's 50.3, 50.3%. And in pediatrics, it's 35.2. That is scary that 35% of our children are obese, and why we're seeing a lot of problems, because it really affects the immune system. The adipocytes, which are fat cells, can release more than 30 inflammatory chemicals. And remember, inflammation is one of the 3 responses of the immune system. So if you tie up one of the responses all the time making inflammation, you're going to see far worse allergies and far worse immune responses. It's just the way it goes. The immune system only has so many processes it can juggle. It has to do a lot. And the obesity takes up a huge portion of the inflammation. The third one is metabolic diseases. So we're looking at things like diabetes. And I know you've heard that 2 of the biggest comorbidities are diabetes and obesity. A lot of times metabolic diseases like diabetes also have obesity tied to them, 42.9%. Less in the children. This is something that sort of develops over time. But these are things that are diet-related diseases. So they are absolutely modifiable, and we can fix them. We can do a lot to help improve our outcomes. We're not just at luck or unluck here. There's a lot we can work on. So the first one is stress. That highest one was hypertension, and I'm seeing so many more cases of hypertension. And it's not who you think, that it's always the 60-year-old man, right? It's a lot of younger adults having really high stress, raising their blood pressure, which kicks your body into fight or flight, and that shuts down your immune response. So you're going to be immune compromised because that's immune suppression. If your immune system cannot respond properly, you won't have a great response. That will kick up your risk of insulin resistance, metabolic disease, by decreasing the insulin receptor sensitivity. So there's those receptors always floating around in the body. And if insulin is not working on the receptor, then it cannot bring glucose into the cells and it cannot give you energy. You're going to feel fatigued and tired all the time. And that is how we feel when we're really stressed out. It's also catabolic, which means it's breaking down in the body. You will not be muscle building, you'll be muscle wasting and bone wasting, because this drives a lot of osteoporosis. We're seeing huge amounts of bone health issues, and a lot of it starts from stress. Stress can be from, it does not have to be from your job. Don't think that it's, the stress of the 80s or the 90s. Stress can be from chronic pain, from gut issues. It can be from food sensitivities. Your body doesn't know the difference between a deadline and a bad food. It just knows that it's stressed. It can be from insomnia, subluxations, which are joint displacements, infections, relationships, so many things. And there's so many things we can do to mitigate our stress, to work on mindfulness, and to reduce the risk of a heart attack, which is not typically from eating fat, but from stress. And this compounds our bad response with the immune system. So the metabolic diseases and obesity, there was a study in Kaiser in Southern California that looked at 190,000 kids with COVID-19. And the rates of obesity were astounding. In 5 to 11-year-olds, it went from 36% to 46% obese. So we saw it as about 32 in that last slide, but 46% obese in 5 to 11-year-olds. It's just horrendous, and it sets them up for a lifetime of comorbidities and poor outcomes in their immune system. That study showed that 2/3 of the kids' diet was ultra-processed foods. So that we can definitely improve, and we can improve the BMI so that we know we're working on this response. The biggest offenders of the immune system are immune triggers. Remember that your body is that cat trying to determine if it's self or can use that protein to be self. It cannot use Orange Crush. Nothing in there. High fructose corn syrup, orange food coloring, nothing in that bottle can be used. All of it will be an offender, because the immune system, 60 to 70% lies in the gut. It's going, I can't use that. Candy, cannot use it. These fried, overly processed proteins, the body cannot use. So that drives up inflammation, increases the insulin, reduces the receptors to the insulin, increases your LDL, your bad cholesterol, decreases your HDL, your good cholesterol, increases your triglycerides, increases your blood pressure, increases cancer cell growth, increases your sugar cravings because your body wants more. It's like, I'm not even getting the sugar that I need from like natural fruit. And then it makes the blood sticky, likely to clot, and could lead to a heart attack and a stroke. Very scary picture. High insulin can lead to depression, panic attacks, anxiety, insomnia, ADHD. It starts to increase the fat storage around the abdominal area, which starts converting any bit of testosterone to estrogen and creating this estrogen dominance, making more and more estrogen, making our men look like women. It ages the brain and starts leading to plaques, type 3 diabetes, or what we call type 3 diabetes, which is essentially dementia and Alzheimer's. And you can see why we're so immune compromised. Someone that you might have thought was healthy, they say this all the time, no, he was perfectly healthy. And I'm like, really? And then I just go look through the charts in our clinic and I'm like, oh, there you see it. Oh, the high LDL. Oh, the low HDL. Oh, the high triglycerides. Oh, yeah, we weren't quite there, what we needed necessarily to be healthy. We're also exposed to all of this toxicity. A lot of times it's in the pharmaceuticals, things like antibiotics that kill off the good bacteria, things like prednisone that kick our body into a fight or flight, antacids, things like heavy metals that are coming out in the smoke, things like plastics that are out in the landfills and in the ocean. Pesticides are full of all of these disruptors that affect your immune system. We have bacterial infections, food additives. All of these reduce the sensitivity to the receptors. So remember I was talking about we need all those receptors floating around so that they can decoy and catch the ACE. Man, if the body's toxic, there are no receptors and the cell's just sitting there with, you have to have a couple ACE2 receptors are really important for the body, but they are right on the cells where they need to be, and anything that binds is going to be a bigger burden to your system. So there's a lot we can do here to clean up the body and to make it a cleaner path of detoxification. So this was super depressing, and let's talk about what you can do. First of all, immune modulators. Remember I was saying they're amazing. They are amazing nutrients that modulate the immune and inflammatory and allergenic response. They increase as needed, because sometimes you need inflammation. Like when you sprain your ankle, you need it to inflame so that you get off of it so that it can heal. And it needs to resolve quickly, right? Resveratrol is a great modulator. It's in dark grapes. So this is funny because sometimes they say, so wine is good, right? That's always the question with cholesterol. Is wine good? The way wine used to be made from dark grapes was probably amazing, but now there's over 60 chemicals that they can add to wine. And again, those are probably not self or recognized by self, and they can turn a good product into a bad product. So it's all about getting the cleanest product. In the bottom, we have turmeric in that bright yellow powder. We already talked about it being great for the ACE receptors. It activates those macrophages, those Pac-Mans that I talked about it increases those so that they're eating up the bad guys. So it's just an amazing nutrient and powder and herb and spice that you can be using. Ginger stimulates an acute response. So sometimes people hear this and they think like elderberry or echinacea, or should we eat these? Should we not eat these? It can stimulate an acute response that can increase your circulation and your lymph and your detox, and it works as an anti-inflammatory and can be really effective. If it's too strong for you, you'll probably notice it right away. It's not going to send you to the hospital strong, but it's something that can be very effective to open things up and get the immune system and the lymph flowing. Ashwagandha, incredibly helpful when we're in that stressed out place, to help gently calm the system down and help it respond to cortisol, our natural adrenaline. None of these things, resveratrol and turmeric and ginger and ashwagandha, none of these things stop a process from happening like aspirin, but they help modulate, convince the immune system to act and resolve. Act and resolve. That's what we want it to do. Like exercise. Exercising out in the sunshine, right? It helps you act and resolve. Mushrooms. Mushrooms are an amazing teacher for the immune system because they're not self. They're not even close. Bacteria or viruses are sometimes close. Sometimes they have similar things, but this mushroom, the body goes, oh, that is not self, and it deals with it immediately. And it's not offensive, right? It's not trying to get in and replicate, and it's just trying to grow in like a little dark place. So it's really important to teach the immune system, and that's how they work. And really important to balance your blood sugar, and why it's so important to reduce the amount of sugar that's going into the body. I do this in so many ways. Please, on my YouTube channel, subscribe, follow all the videos. On my blog, I know it's expensive to come see me, but I put out so much free information so that you can see how do I lower my blood sugar. I have a full detox that you can join, and it's amazing. It can really help you learn how to reduce that blood sugar. So here we're back to this slide really quickly. You kind of understand a little bit more. There's the antigen presenting cell and all the T cells. But you've noticed in the white boxes, there's things like resveratrol and turmeric. So what I wanted you to see, vitamins A and D and glutathione, these are where these things get in and improve or try to convince the body to go the right pathway. And so I just wanted you to see really quickly kind of how they affect the body. And you see resveratrol in like 3 or 4 different places, right? It's a really heavy hitter to eat those really dark berries. And you're not just affecting one part of the system though. When you take these things, you're affecting broader areas of your immune system, and just something to remember. So if I were to narrow it down to the critical vitamins that you need, they are vitamin A for the immune system. I always tell my kids it's like Spider-Man eyes. You need vitamin A, really healthy for the eyes. B12, vitamin C, we know that. A bunch of us are taking vitamin C. Your body makes vitamin C. It is an anti-inflammatory, and you can get it in tons of fruits and vegetables. Vitamin D, we know the range should be somewhere between 50 and 60 with your doctor on the lab. There's been so many comprehensive reviews, 24 studies, 3,637 people taking this. Even a cheap vitamin D, they could cut the risk of death from COVID. It's so important. Vitamin E and folic acid, and those are in the greens. I think the main problem here is that it's these like school lunches, institutional lunches, hospital food, prison food, all of these foods that we're feeding people are just so nutrient deficient. Most of them are just made from these oils that are not the kind of fats that your body needs, and these flours that are not, again, the kind of vitamins that you need. They'll say things like enriched, meaning it's not a whole grain anymore. It doesn't have those vitamins anymore that it's supposed to have. So they had to put it back in, and unfortunately, they're often using very cheap forms that are just not what our body needs to have a really robust response. And you can get all of these vitamins in all of the really healthy foods that we were talking about in the pictures. So finally, if you want to have a good immune response and you're going to get the vaccine, a lot of this was from Dr. Heather Zwicky, PhD in immunology. We're looking at, depends on when you're watching this, and it could be later, but when I was putting it together, over 177 million people vaccinated. It took a lot for me to go in and get vaccinated at first. I was scared. I wasn't hesitant. I was curious and concerned, and I just wanted to make sure it was safe for my family. And I could tell you from having a really poor response the first time, what I did to go through the second time and to help my children go through this was very helpful. The information, you want to make your natural immunity stronger, right? You want to reduce your viral load. So if you have any other infection, it's a really good time to get rid of it first and make sure that your body is well rested and has ample nutrition. Make sure that you slept really well the night before so that you don't have a fight or flight response going on in the body. You want to improve your blood sugar regulation and reduce inflammation. Make sure that you're eating an anti-inflammatory diet, that you're not kicking up inflammation and making the body deal with one of those other immune responses or allergies. You don't want to be putting in the foods and causing things that raise your allergenic response. You want to allow your body to be sick. When you get that vaccine or when you get wild COVID, please give your body the nurturing that it needs so that it can actually respond better. If you're trying to reduce your inflammation, you can try the omega-3s. You can also use SPMs. I can put a link below so that you can find them, which are really strong specialized pro-resolving mediators that reduce inflammation quickly, especially if you caught COVID and you want to make sure that you reduce it really quickly so that you don't have an over response. And don't forget that it's really important to make sure you're in a mentally healthy and safe space, because this is an integrative approach and every little thing matters. It's really important for your health. Please find me at foodfoundation.guru if you have any questions that I did not address. I want you to be able to use this code LHT50OFF for this year, the rest of this year. I will honor it until December 31st, 2021. For any of my services, I have the detox if you want to work on your blood sugar regulation. I have the No More Acid Reflux program, which is $49, so you could essentially get it for free. That's such a critical piece that I want you to work on that first. And if it's something bigger and larger than just working on your immune system, come see me. And if you just want free nutrition tips, then follow me on social media. I'm here for you, and I'll see you next time. So we have a great Q&A. I'm going to ask this question that was sent in. Is the vaccine making the SARS-CoV-2 more virulent? This is such a good question, and I know something that I was concerned in the beginning, and after reading about it and understanding, I can now guarantee no. It's actually not in the virus's best interest to kill the host. So the virus actually doesn't want us to die, because then it can't keep using our cells to replicate and move on. It's mostly there to use us, so it needs us to stay alive. The transmissibility, that is selected for, because it wants to be able to transmit to everyone. But virulence, that's sort of a chance, and it's basically due to the health of the host. We have another Q about the actual vaccines themselves, and somebody was asking, should I get Pfizer or Moderna? Now remember, I cannot tell you what you should get because I'm not a doctor. I'm simply a nutritionist with a master's in human nutrition and functional medicine. What I can tell you is that the Pfizer vaccine has 30 micrograms of the unit, and the Moderna has 100 micrograms of the unit. So it is actually 3 times, a little bit more material that is given to the body. So you can use that to your knowledge of what you need in your body. If it's a smaller person, you might be thinking maybe a smaller dose, especially because they are now looking at using half that dose, so maybe 15 micrograms in young children. And this is because they're seeing the same amount of T cell response, regardless of how much is injected. Finally, we have a question about the soreness in the arm. And this is a good question and something that I share with my friend. Like, when you get poked by a thorn, let's say you walked by a rose bush and you got poked, it hurts because the thorn pokes through the skin and then releases all of the material that your immune system needs to respond to. So again, it's not necessarily the needle or the material that's being injected into the arm, especially with Pfizer and Moderna. The only other material other than the RNA is the lipid or the fat that's around the RNA, which is polyethylene glycol, or kind of like a petroleum. It's unfortunate, for sure, but your body can flush that out, and you have probably put petroleum on your body before. It's a very small amount of people that are allergic to it. But a thorn, you might not even know what was on that thorn, and when it gets in there, it hurts because for days, your immune system is responding to that material. So that is why you have soreness in the arm. You could use a little bentonite clay and put that right afterwards and put the bandage over, and that would help to draw the impurities out. Otherwise, with a healthy system, you will be flushing things out of your body naturally. Thank you so much for watching.